Joining me now, Scott Rasmussen, one of the best pollsters ever in the history of polling ever. You can go to scottrasmussen.com, scottrasmussen.com. And Scott also has his daily tracking polls, and he's with us now. Scott, great to have you.
John, always good to be with you, and it's crazy time with 8 days to go.
All right, Scott, I want you to give it to us straight. You're one of the most accurate pollsters out there. We're getting a lot of, let's call it disinformation, fake news, fake polls. I mean, when I see a CBS poll after, 5 days after Joe Biden basically said he was going to eliminate the oil and energy industry, that he's up by 5 in Texas, you know that poll's a complete and utter joke. So we just mock it. Where is Trump now in this race?
Well, nationwide, for the last several weeks leading up to the debate, my polling showed the president was consistently down by about 8 points. I'll be releasing some new numbers this afternoon at justthenews.com. Showed the president has made just a little bit of progress. But, John, the big question here, there's two issues that people need to focus on. Number one, if the race is very close, it comes down to some key battleground states. And second, it is very difficult in the best of circumstances to predict turnout. And none of us have ever predicted turnout before during a pandemic. So what I've been doing is releasing 3 sets of numbers. What if the turnout is better for Republicans? What if it's a little bit better for Democrats? And right now, if I take a look at my strong Republican turnout model, the president is just outside the area where he could actually pull off an upset in the Electoral College. So, it's a race that is not wildly out of reach, but it's very clear the president is trailing somewhat. Now, let me talk about specific states, and this gets to the question of turnout. And turnout is not about a polling technique. It's about who's actually going to vote. In Florida, my baseline polling shows the president is down by 2 points, but he can win that state with a stronger than projected Republican turnout. In North Carolina, the exact same thing is happening. In Arizona, he's down by a point, but could pull off a victory with a stronger than expected turnout. All my battleground state polls are being released at politicaliq.com, new numbers every day, but they all tell the same story. The president is trailing by a little bit and needs a very strong Republican turnout to win.
Well, he certainly seems to be getting that in Florida. When we look at the early voting numbers there, they're exceeding expectations, especially in the rural areas, Republican strongholds. Like last year, if I go back to this week, October 26th, 8 days out, 2016, we were in Trump Tower that week. Looking at the numbers, we were in a lot worse shape in Florida than we are now as far as the early balloting is concerned. So it looks like we're getting a big turnout in Florida. Also, you know what, Scott? What everybody is underestimating here is Trump's ground game. And that's never going to show up in any polling anywhere. But when you talk about Republican turnout, that's basically dragging or pulling or pushing or cajoling lower propensity voters to come out. We've got, like just in Virginia, for example, we'll have knocked on 750,000 doors by November 3rd with a 37.5% home rate. We're targeting low propensity voters. That's the turnout model. We'll have contacted via phone, in person, over 3 million people. There's only 4.5 million people going to vote. So those don't show up anywhere. Biden doesn't have a ground game. There's nobody knocking. They've knocked on 0 doors in America. Could that make a difference?
It could make a difference. That's the reason you do a get out the vote effort. And I think what I was trying to convey is a sense that while the president is down, a small change can make a huge difference. I mean, think about this. If the president is down by a couple of points in Florida, North Carolina, and Arizona, and he loses by a point in each, he can't possibly win the White House. But if there's a ground game that boosts his performance by just a couple of points, he wins those states. That's why it's so critical in a close race. Now, there's another side to it, and this is the thing that keeps me up at night as a pollster. When you look at the models we're talking about, and you mentioned you go back to 4 years ago, or you go back to some other earlier times, that's the way we normally look at models to see how they're doing, to see how they compare. But the last time that there was a pandemic in America. It was 1918. There was no polling industry. We don't have data on this. So, yes, turnout at all levels is breaking records this year. The question I have is how many mail-in ballots are actually going to be submitted? Because among people who tell us they're going to vote by mail, Joe Biden is winning by huge margins. We know that people who've already voted tend to be a little bit pro-Biden overall. We know that people who tell us they're going to vote on Election Day are very heavily pro-Trump. But these mail-in voters are so heavily invested in Joe Biden. The question is, will millennials who don't use snail mail as part of their daily life actually get those ballots in? And then will they be properly filled out and counted? And so that's the turnout nightmare that, from a polling perspective, is causing me some angst.
It's interesting you bring that up, Scott, because historically, those people that request mail-in ballots, historically, not obviously everything here is different, but if you go back in history, and if you believe that history can repeat itself, you go back and look at every model, an average across the nation for the past 20 years, 20% of mail-in ballots requested either A, don't ever make it back, or B, are tossed out because not signed, not sealed, not checked the wrong box, didn't put their address on it, whatever else the stipulations are, 20% get thrown out. I mean, even if you cut that in half and you say, okay, this time people will be a bit more aware of it, even if you cut that number in half, I mean, that could turn into Trump right there if 15, 18%, 12% of the Democratic mail-in ballots don't ever make it back.
Sure, and look, that's something we're trying to address in my turnout models. We're trying to estimate that. We also know that people who are voting by mail for the first time are 3 times as likely to have their ballot rejected. But let me tell you where this is leading us. The best case scenario for Republicans in this election right now is a close election that comes down to states again like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And that will have a little bit of a feel like 4 years ago if we get to that point. But the difference is we won't know the winner in that case for 3 or 4 weeks. We won't know who wins the presidency, the Senate. We won't know who controls some key state legislatures. And the reason is all these mail-in ballots will be counted, and there will be legal challenges to just about all of them. Now, some states have done mail-in voting before. Utah does it all the time. But when you talk about a state like Pennsylvania, a pivotal state, they have never dealt with this. It is going to be a bonanza for the lawyers if the race comes down to Pennsylvania. But for the rest of the nation, it will be weeks and weeks of uncertainty where every day Donald Trump's Election Day lead is chipped away at by mail-in ballots.
That's going to cause the anxiety for Trump supporters, right? There's no question about it, because every day you get up, you're going to start with this big lead, and every day you get up, it's going to dwindle, right? And it's a matter of, are you going to make it over the finish line, right? It's like when you go to the races. Right. I've done this many times. I'll bet a front runner trying to go wire to wire. You got the lead the whole way. You're midway in the stretch. The other couple of competitors are coming up. Your horse is fading, and it's like, oh my God, where's the wire? Where's the wire? Get to the wire. And so that's kind of that's going to be the way it is, right?
That's exactly right. In Utah earlier this year, I did some polling in the governor's race and the governor's primary. Whoever wins the Republican primary becomes governor there. And it became clear that John Huntsman could win only by bringing in a really enlarged electorate, people who didn't normally vote in the Republican primary. As we got close, we were projecting what it might be, and it was going to be a toss-up. Well, it took a full week of counting mail-in ballots before it was finally decided that Spencer Cox won. He won by less than 1%. He had been leading at the beginning, as you suggested, and he hung on till the wire arrived, till the race ended. And John Huntsman was very gracious in defeat, but still, for months after that, his supporters were trying to get him to run a write-in campaign. There was a lot of pent-up anger and energy in the process. And I think it's safe to say that if we have a situation like that with the presidency and control of the Senate on the line, neither Joe Biden or Donald Trump will be as gracious as John Huntsman. And
Right.
the anxiety and the questions about cheating and legitimacy will dominate political dialogue for 3 weeks.
John Fredericks Radio Network, Truck the Truth Across America with Scott Rasmussen, one of the greatest pollsters in history, and he's with us now. And you can go to scottrasmussen.com. Sign up for his newsletter. I do. I can't wait till it comes every day. Plus, he's got updates on Politico, IQ, also on Just the News. Go to scottrasmussen.com. That way, everything is there. So control the Senate also up for grabs right now. Scott, I'm going to get to some key races. Get your take. Let's go to Maine's Susan Collins. Trailing, is going to vote against Amy Coney Barrett today, we understand. What's the deal there?
I think Susan Collins is someone you never want to count out. She's got a long history in the state, but my numbers show that she is behind. It won't surprise me at all if she is defeated on November 3rd.
McSally and Kelly, Arizona. Kelly had a double-digit lead. Some polls say that's evaporated. What do you see there?
I show McSally down by 6 points, maybe a little movement, clearly an uphill fight. That's one of the races that I would say it wouldn't be a total shock if she wins, but she is certainly the underdog. The only place it would be a total shock for the Republican to win at this point, I think, is Colorado with Cory Gardner.
So you look at Cory Gardner, he's done. He's toast. Yeah, he's toast. That's kind of what I think. I saw him on Fox the other day, and he didn't look very. It just, I've been following this a long time. You can just tell body language. It was kind of a fake smile, and I'm like, he's dead. Democrats are going to win that seat. Okay, let's get to North Carolina. Tom Tillis way behind, but then the scandal with this Cal Cunningham guy allegedly messing around with junior officers' wives and stuff like that. What is that about?
Well, the whole thing is bizarre in North Carolina, and it's obviously a presidential battleground state. It's been contentious all year. I can't really comment on it because I'm finishing up a poll in North Carolina right now, and the results will be released tomorrow at PoliticalIQ.com. So until I look at the numbers, I don't know. This is a race that, as you put it, Tillis was expected to lose badly. There is some belief that the scandal is helping him, although the numbers from others haven't borne it out just yet. But if Tillis were to win that race, then the Republicans would have a much better shot at hanging on to control of the Senate.
Yeah, they absolutely have to win that race. We'll see what happens. Now, what about the governorship there? Cooper and whoever the Republican is.
That's Democrat. That's not going to be in contention. So,
how are these Democratic governors so popular when they had all these shutdowns that destroyed economies? I mean, it's amazing to me. Yeah. Whitmer, the guy in New Jersey who I can't stand the guy, Murphy. I mean, they've destroyed businesses there, put millions of people out of work, and their popularity's through the roof.
Yeah, it's very hard for people on the political right to understand, but there's a lot of Americans who absolutely believe that the lockdowns are the right approach. One thing that we did a poll last week for JustTheNews.com found that 59% of Republicans are very confident that if they tested positive, they'd recover. And most of the rest of Republicans are at least somewhat confident they would. Only 25% of Democrats have that confidence. So the view from the left is that if you're not locking down, if you're not adhering to social distancing, you are putting my health at risk. And that's what's helping these governors right now in the short term.
Health for what? 99.7% of people recover, and if you have no underlying morbidities, or if you're not 85, it's 99.9%. I mean, anyway, look, that's for a whole nother discussion. Whatever. I can't even get into that now. It's so depressing. Okay, so Republicans are going to pick up Alabama. That puts them at 54, right? Because they're 53 now. So then, if Biden wins, the Democrats need 4 seats. Cory Gardner's gone. Susan Collins at risk, that's 2. McSally at risk, that's 3. What's the other 2 likely or possible Democrat pickups? Possible.
Well, we've already mentioned Tillis in North Carolina, which Again, I don't really have a final opinion until I see my numbers, but
right.
But it's been It's been getting competitive, but he is still considered an underdog. And the other one is Iowa, Joni Ernst, who's had some trouble, stumbled during a debate recently. Numbers there show that, this is one of those races where my model shows she's down a little bit with a strong Republican turnout. She can come out on top. It could be that kind of a situation where it is just a couple of races let us know who controls the U.S. Senate. And again, remember what I said before, if it's that close, if we come down after Election Day and we note that the races in North Carolina and Iowa are still in play for the Senate, maybe for the White House, we won't know who controls the U.S. Senate at least until Thanksgiving. And by the way, there's one other possibility, 2 Senate races in Georgia this year. It is possible that neither one of them will result in a clear winner because you have to win 50% of the vote or there's a runoff. It is possible we could have a runoff on January 5th in Georgia that will determine control of the U.S. Senate.
That's very possible because, look, I think Purdue is going to beat Ossoff. I don't have any question in my mind there. Our internal polls show him up like 5, so he's going to win that.
Yeah, but will he get the 50%? We don't quite know, but yes, I would expect him to win.
Yeah, but you look at the other one, which is a jungle primary, nobody's going to get 50% there. And so that's going to be a runoff either between Collins and Kelly Loeffler, the appointed incumbent, and Warwick, who's a very popular Democratic African-American pastor there. That is going to go into history shows us that every time there's been a Senate runoff in Georgia, the Republicans won handily. You go to Saxby-Chambliss and, I don't know, I forget, 2000-something, 2008. Right. You go to Chambliss in 2008. You go to Paul Coverdale in 96, I think. No, when did Clinton win? 90.
Well, let me just throw something into that mix. I agree with you that if it goes to a runoff, the Republicans are likely to win in Georgia. But there are 2 fundamentally different circumstances about that race. One is if it's clear on Election Day that Democrats that either party has won control, so that on that January 5th date, control of the Senate is not at stake. In that case, the election will be somewhat low-key, and the Republican will be favored to win. If that race, that Senate seat, is going to be decisive in who controls the Senate, it will be the most intense special election in the history of this nation. There will be national forces everywhere. You won't be able to go through Georgia with anybody and not hear about that race every minute of the day.
And the runoff is in January, which is normally it's in December. So this time it's January 5th. So they put that off. So yeah, there'll be $1 billion spent in that state for that runoff. It'll be a staggering amount of money. I wish I owned a local TV station there. I'd make a lot of money. That's what I wish I did, right? Time will tell. Yeah. Hey, I got one text here from Nick in Virginia Beach. He says, hey, before we go, does John James have a shot in Michigan?
He has a shot. We'll be polling there in the next couple of days, do our final numbers. This is one of those cases, if it was a solid Republican year, you would say, yeah, he's a great candidate. He's running against a lackluster incumbent. And he has a bright future. Right now, it's not impossible to foresee a win, but that would be a bonus for the Republicans. And also, by the way, long shot bonus possibility in Minnesota. I mean, I go back to the fact that none of us really know what the turnout will be like because we're trying to estimate without historical background. So we're estimating some ranges. The chances of John James winning are greater than the chances of Lindsey Graham losing.
That's Scott Rasmussen. Great analysis, Scott. Thank you for being with us. We'll look forward to having you on Monday for your final predictions, Scott. Got to do that. John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America.